everybody. I may be streaming right now, but this stream is simply a Huskar guide. I'm going to be talking about as much detail as I can about this hero. He is one of my favorite heroes. I believe I understand the hero completely, and I want to show you guys how you can use him to climb MMR, pick him in your semi-competitive or competitive teams, and make use of him to your greatest abilities. So first off, I took a lot of tips from watching Wagamama's guide to TA. And first thing I'm going to show is that my success as Huskar, to really portray how my builds have really been ironed out and have been successful. So first off, if you don't include practice games, if you go through these pages and ranked matchmaking solo, I'm not going to count it all out in front of you, but needless to say, my record in the last 22 games is 18-4. Is Huskar. I didn't go back any further, but I think that speaks a lot for itself. I wanted to, if I go back any further, it doesn't really become current any longer. So I just want you to know that that's my win rate in pubs, and on my stay on Summer's Rift, my Huskar record was 7-1, and that one loss was due to my team honestly not listening to me and not banning Ancient Apparition. And Ancient Apparition is the biggest counter to Huskar in the game, and we lost the game merely because I could not do anything. So on that note, I think the first thing and one of the most important things to talk about on Huskar is when to pick him and when he's good and what makes him good. So, a lot of people talk about matchups in the mid lane, Quap versus TA, TA doesn't do that hot, or Puck versus TA, Puck doesn't do very well. For Huskar, it's not nearly as much the lane. It does matter the lane, but it's mostly heroes that just counter him. When you have a hero whose passive makes him nearly immune to magic damage, and when he's at low HP, needless to say, if you do magic damage, you do nothing to him, and if you do a lot of physical or pure damage, you kind of own the hero, right? So I'm going to kind of just list through the heroes that that are his counters. So I'm going to start with the heroes that I consider him unpickable against. And when I say that, I mean that if those heroes are in the pool or have already been picked, you just don't pick him. There's really no else to say, and I'll explain why for each one. The top one, and by far the worst, is Ancient Apparition. He prevents all healing. And Huskar completely relies on the item of Armlet, so if you turn Armlet off when you are Ancient Apparition ultied, you will lose 500 health and not be able to gain it back. Needless to say, you almost always are sitting at low HP as Huskar. You almost start every fight at low HP, so to get AA ultied and have your Armlet on, you're basically taking an extra 40 damage per second, and you can't heal. And his first ability is reliant on healing him when he has low health. So Ancient Apparition is by far the biggest counter, simply because he's not a mobile hero that can avoid the A ulti. BKB doesn't get rid of it. There's nothing you can do about it. That's really the biggest thing. I'd say the next one is Quap, because her ultimate is BKB piercing in the mid game. In the late game, she's not nearly as good versus him, but she's a very popular hero that can gank him early on, and if used effectively, can kill him very easily in the early to mid game and keep him shut down. Lina is next, and I say Lina because with her Ag Scepter ultimate that goes through BKB that does 950 pure damage almost all the time you are below half health, and for a very long period of time in the game you will have less than 2,000 health. So that kind of explains itself. Next we have Brood. Broodmother is not a direct counter to Huskar in terms of how every other hero is a counter to Huskar, but Huskar is extremely reliant on having a good lane, and the only way that he's allowed to lose his lane and still be successful is if they have to dedicate 2 or 3 heroes to shutting him down. And Brood is the only hero that can, by herself, shut down a Huskar, and just dominates her lane, and there's nothing you can do to save him. And he's not a very versatile hero. I do not believe he is good at going in and off lane or mid. I will talk about that as well. But yeah, I would not pick it into a Broodmother as well. And lastly, in that tier is Bloodseeker. The only reason Bloodseeker is really a counter, he isn't the best at killing Huskar, but you reliantly have to utilize Huskar to his fullest and max potential. You have to be farming at super low health. So if you are utilizing him efficiently, Bloodseeker will always see you where you are, and he will be moving fast and doing a ton of damage and everything like that. That just kind of innately makes him a counter to Huskar in the mid game. You're more buffing Bloodseeker than making it hard for you as Huskar. So in the next tier, we have Axe, just simply for the dunk spin damage is physical. He's not nearly, these heroes are pickable against, but it's not ideal. So there's Axe, first off, because he can kind of aggro lane you if he gets help, but also just the mid game when he gets a blink, you're pretty scary, but later on, he's not nearly as bad. Ursa, simply because if you dunk Ursa, he mans up on you and kills you because of the nature of Fury swipes. It's really hard to armlet toggle because if you actually armlet toggle him a couple times, he'll just have enough damage to one-shot you through your armlet, as well as the fact that he can ultimate to take no damage from you and be able to withstand your damage to him, so he'll be able to outman fight you. Viper, because of his physical damage from his passive, makes it so when you're lower health, he kills you a lot easier. And also because he is so good at shutting down a single target, and the damage over time is really hard to armlet toggle in the mid game. And then Doom, simply, I mean, straightforward. If he has an Ag Scepter, there's really no way for you to avoid getting doomed, and he just kills you. I consider him second tier because he needs an Ag Scepter and because he's not very popular. So you don't usually have to worry about Doom, and you can also get an Aegis to deal with Doom. So that's why he's in the second tier. And then third tier are kind of the last heroes I thought about that I wouldn't want him against ideally, but I would still pick him in competitive. In pubs, these heroes can be kind of a nightmare. Timber, the reason why Timber's down here, even though he supplies a bunch of pure damage, is a solo offlaner who loses to Huskar in lane. You can counter him with a BKB, and you'll have a good start, so you should be able to farm pretty decently. And he still has to hit you with all of his stuff, right? So you have to be disabled, you have to not be able to dodge him, all that stuff. I said TA because she's just a high physical burst damage hero. She usually builds Deso, minus armor, and that kind of counters the whole hero entirely. She adds a lot of physical damage to her teammates, but at the same time, I'm still willing to pick Huskar. Clinks, he's a high physical damage dealer that is invisible, obviously. So if you are trying to jungle at low health to medium health in the mid game or at any time in the game where you're farming and you're not super strong already, he's really good at scouting you out, getting maybe one person to help him, or even doing it solo, bursting you down with his physical damage. Ricky, same concept, clouding you. You can't heal yourself, you can't ulti, you can't do anything, and he supplies enough physical damage from backstab that's really hard to armlet toggle. That's mostly in pubs, but like in professional, I wouldn't be as concerned. I'd like have supports that bought me sentries. Tinker for the laser pure damage and mischance, as well as the fact that it's mostly in the late game that one of the hardest counters to Huskar is a permasheep from Tinker. He's like the one hero in the game that can permanently disable you, and the way to beat Huskar in the late game is by simply ignoring him, killing his team, and then killing Huskar after all of his team is dead. So a hero that can permanently stun him is obviously ideal for that scenario. And my last hero I put on this list is Enigma, simply because his Midnight Pulse is pure damage, and it basically creates a battlefield that you can't fight on. Like, you have to just avoid it, and you're not particularly mobile. The biggest thing about it is if you're really snowballing already and you're healing yourself with your first ability, it'll probably do about the same amount of damage as your first ability, and it's not like it's pure burst damage, so you'll usually have time to get out of it as long as you're not getting perma-stunned on top of it. So those are the heroes that I would say are bad against Huskar, or that Huskar is bad against, I'm sorry. And I would ideally not pick him into. Just the ones that I'm going to repeat again that I would never pick him into is AA, Queen of Pain, Lina, Brood, and Bloodseeker. So people talk to me about begging me to play Huskar mid. Why do you not Huskar mid, etc., etc. What about Huskar offlane? Coming from Dota Buffs, number 1 ranked Huskar in the world, not to toot my own horn, but just being straight with you here. He is not a mid laner, and he is not an off laner. I will note that in the mid lane, he is good against heroes like Ember, Pudge, Zeus. He does decently versus TA. But as the thing I'm going to highlight later in the game, or later in this guide, is that he is very weak early. His passive is not leveled up. He has 1 base armor. He has no mobility. Needless to say, his abilities are really weak early on without any items. That makes him weak in lane if he's pressured, which is why I said heroes like Broodmother are really good, and why he's also weak to ganks. So you got to put it. The reason why he's so important to put in the safe lane is he's squishy as fuck. So if you put him in the mid lane, you'd be like, oh, he's good against heroes like TA. It's like, yes, if this was an ideal world where you are 1v1ing a TA, you'll do just fine. But if you have to fight the TA ever, and she gets help from like one support that has a stun, you're gonna die. There's really nothing else to say about it. That's why I view him as a poor mid. With heroes like Zeus, he free farms. With heroes like Pudge, he dominates them so hard that it's okay. But all I can very much say is the validation that he's so weak, and he's so weak to ganks that putting him mid lane leaves him extremely vulnerable to that kind of thing. So first off, after that, that's why he should be a safe laner. I'm going to talk about starting items on the hero, and I'm going to be showing you 3 different games in 3 different scenarios that encompass each one of these, and each different scenario in the game will portray how my build and Huskar vary slightly, but not very much. So first off, against melee offlaners that you will not be getting harassed by, and they are by themselves. This is Clockwork, Tidehunter, Spirit Breaker. Those are the big ones I think of off the top of my head. There are others, but those are ones that don't really have a way to harass Huskar. You know, like Tidehunter, Anchor Smash has to be melee range. Spirit Breaker can charge you, but that's about it. And Clockwork has to cog you, and that's like, as long as you're not retarded, shouldn't get cogged by Clockwork. My build is to go Boots, Tango, and a Branch. You will see this in this first game. So I'm going to go into this first game, and I'm going to show you how you should approach the lane when you are in this particular situation. Every way to lane Huskar is different based on the matchup he is in. So I'm going to go into this game first. So in this particular game, I end up snowballing. I'm against a